The history of the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association is usually read by Mr. Mickey Ganich, United States Navy Quartermaster Chief, retired. This now 94-year young man, who can still do a three-point football stance, by the way, is a Pearl Harbor survivor from the battleship USS Pennsylvania. This year, as I mentioned before, Mickey's in Hawaii paying tribute out there at their remembrance ceremony. So in his stead, reading the history of the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association is retired Command Master Chief J.R. Stafford. Master Chief.
Thank you, Captain. I can't probably hold a candle to somebody 94 years of age, and although I may look that, I will attempt to read this wonderful history. It's my very distinct honor to read the history and give you an idea of how these wonderful people, and now their families, have come together over the years to preserve the memory of that fateful day in 1941. The following history is compiled from excerpts of a talk given in 1998. That was the 40th anniversary of founding the Survivors Association. Speaker was a man by the name of Mr. Bob Kronberg, one of the founding fathers. And he was a member of the USS West Virginia during the attack on December 7th, 1941. Bear in mind that these remarks were made 15 years ago, but they're still relevant today. From the start, our organization was more or less conceived by accident. Our origin can easily be traced to a ship's reunion being held during the first weeks of December 1954. The former crew members of the USS West Virginia held their annual reunions at the VFW Hall in Gardena, California. While covering the December 1954 West Virginia reunion, Mark Ferris, editor of the Gardena, California Tribune, made it known that he, like many of the former sailors, was also a victim of the tragedy during the Day of Infamy. On December 7th, 1941, Mark was a member of the 72nd Bomb Squadron at Hickam Field. During conversations that evening, Mark Ferris invited Sam Kronberg and his two sons, Eddie and Bob, and remembering that Bob was the one giving these remarks 15 years ago. All three were crew members on the West Virginia, Ed Steffa and Lewis P. Smith, to a dinner party he was hosting on December 7th, 1954, for a few of his friends to commemorate the Day of Infamy. The first get-together was called a Remembrance Party, and it took place in the city of Gardena, California. The participating survivors swore to make this an annual event to be held on the 7th of December each succeeding year. It was felt that it would be only proper to render a toast to our fallen comrades in arms. In the truest fashion of military fellowship, the glasses were raised, emptied, and tossed, crashing into the fireplace, symbolizing that our comrades were absent but not forgotten. Each of the following years, we diligently honored our pledge of getting together. While doing so, we located several other military survivors of Pearl Harbor living in the area and invited them to share in our good fortune for a common cause, that of remembering Pearl Harbor. By 1958, the dinner sessions had grown by 6 more members from various ships and stations. It was the unanimous decision of those who attended this session that we embark on a diligent search in hopes of locating other military survivors who were present on and around and within the 3-mile limits of the island of Oahu during the attack on December 7, 1941. We would then invite them to join with us in our common interest, the Day of Infamy. It was also decided at that time that it would be a worthwhile venture in investigating the possibility of giving formal birth to an organization that would promote our accepted thoughts, that being remembering Pearl Harbor. Are you getting a kind of a feel for what they were trying to do? Remembering Pearl Harbor? Such an organization would hold as sacred the memory of those members, the United States military services, who were forced to pay with their lives the ultimate price for freedom on that fateful Sunday morning, a day that they pledged never to forget or allow our country to forget. Thus was born our motto, Remember Pearl Harbor, Keep America Alert. The gathering assembled that evening and came to the conclusion that all in attendance would be known as the original founders of, or the nucleus of the prospective organization. The appointed bylaws committee later changed this decision when they decided to limit the number of official founders to be the original participating 11. Pardon me. Over the next 2 years, the productivity of the group's recruiting efforts was so successful that over 1,000 responses were received from interested former and active duty military personnel from across the country. The emotional responses were so encouraging that it was decided that at the December 1960 dinner, to hold a framework for an organizational caucus in 1961. The first organized convention convened on the 20th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack, December 7th, 1961, at the Disneyland Hotel in Anaheim, California. In spite of the cold and a dense fog prevailing in Southern California that day, over 300 survivors came forward to join together, affirming that our comrades in arms will never be forgotten and that the silent watch that they keep will not be in vain. At the banquet, the General Rosecrans Post 3261 of Gardena, California, presented our national colors to the National Convention. Survivor Dan McCarthy donated the newly designed Pearl Harbor Survivors Association flag. Our second General Convention was held in Long Beach on the 7th day of December 1962. At this gathering, well over 1,000 potential members were in attendance. It was at this meeting that the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association, Inc. was officially instituted, and our fine organization finally came to life. For the first time in our existence, state contingents with state flags flying arrived and made their presence known. The highlight of the convention occurred when our new national constitution was presented and accepted by the now organized membership. It was announced that the association had been incorporated under the laws of the state of California. It was duly noted that the PHSA, Inc. national insignia was registered in Washington, D.C. From our formal incorporation in December 1962 to the present day, the enthusiasm and scope of the Pearl Harbor Survivors Association has steadily thrived. We now boast of having chapters at every state of the Union. Our association now takes an active part and interest in our nation's affairs, while our own history is still being written. Those remarks were compiled 15 years ago. It saddens me to tell you that the National Pearl Harbor Survivors Association disbanded in December 31st, 2011, the year of the 70th anniversary of the attack. There are far fewer survivors of the attack who are alive today, being that they are in their late 90s and in their 80s. The sons and daughters of the survivors of the U.S. Coast Guard and the U.S. Coast Guard in Alameda continue this ceremony to honor those survivors still with us, those that gave the ultimate sacrifice, and to preserve the association's motto, Remember Pearl Harbor, Keep America Alert.
Thank you, Master Chief. Well done.